9ED, problems with materials. So we are solving lots of problems for ourselves. We are creating ceramics to use in loads of different situations. We are manufacturing these synthetic polymers that didn't exist before because they make our life much easier because they're very flexible and we can use them in different situations. And we're manufacturing all these composite materials. Manufacturing these materials causes its own set of problems and issues, particularly with the environment, as you can imagine. The first problem is we need a lot of energy to manufacture these substances. So of course, where are we getting that energy from? Probably fossil fuels, which as we know are finite resources. We can't get them back again once we've used them. They're gone. That's the first problem. Secondly, in producing these materials, we create a lot of other compounds and substances at the same time that we might intend to be creating that might just be waste products that can cause damage to the environment. Some key examples you need to know are number one, carbon monoxide. This comes about when we don't fully allow the combustion reaction to take place. So combustion is when we're burning anything in oxygen. And if we burn things in oxygen with lots of oxygen around, we end up with carbon dioxide, which has its own issues. And if we haven't allowed this combustion reaction to happen completely, if we don't have enough oxygen, there's not enough oxygen to make carbon dioxide with 2 oxygen atoms in it. So we only end up with carbon monoxide, 1 carbon atom and 1 oxygen atom. We then find carbon monoxide in the environment as soot particles. It's not great for us if we want to be breathing fresh air. It's not ideal. Number 2 key example, sulfur dioxide. This comes about when we have impurities in the fuel that we're using in these manufacturing processes, and there's sulfur in there that shouldn't be. We end up burning the sulfur with oxygen. We get sulfur dioxide, sulfur and 2 oxygen atoms, and sulfur dioxide likes to cause acid rain. Third example, nitrogen oxides. Rather than being caused by incomplete combustion like carbon monoxide, we get nitrogen oxides when there's a very high combustion temperature. It's overly high. Nitrogen oxide also likes to form acid rain. And then lastly, we have our good friend carbon dioxide. This traps the sun's energy in the atmosphere, increases warmth, and increases the greenhouse effect, global warming and climate change. We do try and reduce some of these issues and prevent some of these problems. How do we do this? Well, before we have a problem with incomplete combustion where the combustion reaction isn't happening fully because we didn't have enough oxygen, we just make sure we have an abundance of oxygen so the combustion reaction can be complete and we don't get any carbon monoxide. We can also try to better remove sulfur impurities so we don't get sulfur dioxide to form the acid rain. We can also try and reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we use. A, so that we're not using them. It would be better if we didn't use them up. And B, because using less fossil fuels means we're also releasing less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that's a bonus too. They also want you to be aware of carbon capture, which is where we capture the carbon dioxide from the waste products from factories and power stations and trap it underground. Our other option is to consider using materials instead that are biodegradable, break down over time, unlike a lot of these materials that we're currently manufacturing. And speaking of polymers earlier, we can make biodegradable polymers. These exist, we can get them from plants. So this is another option. But of course, a lot of terrible problems still occur, as well as everything we've mentioned. For example, the release of toxic substances into the environment. What can happen? In one example in the book, a factory was releasing mercury compounds into the sea. Microorganisms would absorb this mercury. They would get eaten by bigger organisms, fish. We would end up eating the fish. Everything would get passed up the food chain, and the humans living nearby ended up being really unwell. This process of the compound moving up the food chain and increasing in concentration is called biomagnification. So you need to remember that keyword too, biomagnification. And that's 9ED.